Alright, so I spent the last few months building financial models for over 100 different high-ticket funnels. We're talking coaching programs, consulting offers, done-for-you services, done-with-you services, all selling anywhere between $5,000 to $50,000 per client. And I want to see what actually makes a funnel profitable, not just what gets you revenue, but what actually puts money in your bank account. Because most people are running funnels that look good on paper, but are barely breaking even or losing a crap ton of money once you account for all the real costs. So I looked at all the data, I had access to it, built out full profit models for each funnel, and tracked what worked and what did not work. And what I found is that there's a very clear pattern that separates profitable funnels from unprofitable ones. Hi, my name is Gian Bernard, and I help business owners build ad systems that actually attract qualified leads. And I've had the privilege to manage over $87 million of ad spend, working with top brands like Amazon.com and a lot of the top info product guys you see all over on YouTube and on Instagram. So I've seen enough funnels to know what actually drives profitability and what's just noise. In this video, I'm going to break down the exact profitability benchmarks from those 100 funnels. We're going to look at what cost per acquisition is realistic, what margins you actually need, what ROAS targets make sense, and what operational cost kills profitability. I'm going to show you the best performing funnel types, the worst performing funnel types, and what variables had the biggest impact on profits. This isn't theory, this is real data from real businesses, and by the end of this, you'll know exactly where your funnel stands and what you need to fix it. So if you're new here, I post content like this often and breaking down what's actually working on paid ads and funnel strategy. No courses to sell, no income claims, just real breakdowns from someone in the trenches every single day. All right, let's get into it. All right, so let's start with what funnels I actually analyzed and how I built these models. The data set includes 100 plus high ticket funnels across different industries: coaching, consulting, agency services, and done-for-you offers. Price point ranges from $5,000 all the way up to $50,000, with most clustering around $8,000 to $15,000. Some funnels were VSL-based, some were webinar-based, some were hybrid structures combining multiple touchpoints, and some were application funnels. I had access to all the ad spend data, revenue data, cost structures, sales team performance, refund rates, and operational overhead for all of them. So this isn't just looking at ROAS, this is looking at the full P&L of each funnel to see what actually made money. So here's how I built the profit models for each funnel. Step number one, I pulled the total ad spend and total revenue for each funnel over a 90-day period, so it's very recent. Step number two, I calculated all the direct costs: sales, commissions, COGS, payment processing fees, and refunds. Step three, I allocated operational overhead on a per customer basis: software, CSM, admin, and creative production. Step number four, I subtracted all costs from revenue to get the net profit, and then calculated the net profit margin. Step number five, I calculated the break-even ROAS for each funnel using the net profit margin formula. And then I sorted all the funnels by net profit margin to see which ones were actually profitable and which ones were just generating revenue. For every funnel, I tracked the following metrics: your cost per lead, your cost per qualified lead, your cost per book call, your show rate, your close rate, your AOV, your average order value, your refund rate, payment plan usage, sales commission percentage, COGS, operational overhead expenses, net profit margin, and even the break-even ROAS. Those are the metrics that actually determine whether a funnel is profitable or not. And what I found is that most people only track the first few metrics and completely ignore the last few, which is why they think they're profitable when they're not. Based on the data, I grouped all the funnels into 4 profit tiers. Tier number 1 is losing money, net profit margin below 0%. Tier number 2 is barely breaking even, net profit margin between 0 and 10%. Tier number 3 is moderately profitable, net profit margin between 10 to 25%. Tier number 4 is highly profitable, net profit margin above 25%. Out of the 100 funnels I analyzed, here's how they broke down. Roughly 32% of them were in Tier 1, losing money. That's a huge percentage. 28% were in Tier 2, barely breaking even. 30% were in Tier 3, moderately profitable, and only 10% were in Tier 4, which is highly profitable. This is where you want to be. So 60% of the funnels were either losing money or barely breaking even, which tells you how hard it is to actually run a profitable high-ticket funnel. All right, so now let's talk about the actual benchmarks from the data, starting with cost per acquisition. Across 100 funnels, the average cost per acquisition was $1,850. But that average is misleading because there's a huge range depending on the offer price and the funnel type. For offers priced between $5,000 and $10,000, the average cost per acquisition, CPA, was $1,200 to $1,800. For others priced between $10,000 to $20,000, the average CPA was $2,000 to $3,500. And for offers priced above $20,000, the average CPA was $3,500 to $6,000. So the higher your price point, the higher your CPA is going to be, which makes sense because you're targeting a smaller, more qualified audience. Now here's the key insight. The funnels with the best profit margins weren't the ones with the lowest CPA. They were the ones with the best ratio of CPA to average order value. The highly profitable funnels had a CPA that was 15% to 25% of their AOV. The barely profitable funnels had a CPA that was 30% to 40% of their AOV, and the unprofitable funnels had a CPA that was 50% or more of their AOV. So if you're selling a $10,000 program, your CPA should be $1,500 to $2,500 to be highly profitable. Second benchmark, sales commission percentage. Across all funnels, the average sales commission was 18%, split between setters and also closers. Most funnels paid 5% to the setters and 13 to 15% to the closer. The highly profitable funnels kept total commissions below 15% of their sale price. The barely profitable funnels were paying 18 to 22% in commissions. And the unprofitable funnels were paying 25% or more, which is absolutely insane. So here's why commissions eat into profitability so fast. They scale with revenue, not with profit. So if you're paying 20% in commissions and your net profit margin is 20%, you're giving away all your profit to the sales team. The best performing funnels had a sales structure where commissions were fixed dollar amounts instead of percentages, or they used a tiered structure where the percentage dropped as the deal size increased. Third benchmark, cost of goods sold as a percentage of revenue. For high-ticket services, COGS include the time and resources it takes to deliver on the promise. Across all funnels, the average COGS was 28% of revenue. The highly profitable funnels kept COGS below 20% by systematizing delivery and using junior team members. The barely profitable funnels had COGS between 25% and 35%. And the unprofitable funnels had COGS above 40%, which means they were spending almost half their revenue just delivering the services. Here's the pattern I noticed. The funnels with the lowest COGS were the ones that had done-for-you offers with clear deliverables and timelines. The funnels with the highest COGS were coaching and consulting offers where the founder was still doing all the delivery themselves. So if you want to improve profitability, you have to reduce your COGS by building systems, hiring support, and scaling your delivery model. The fourth benchmark, which is refund rates. This is one of the most overlooked metrics, and it's a massive profit killer. Across all funnels, the average refund rate was 12%. The highly profitable funnels kept refunds below 5%, which is great. The barely profitable funnels had refunds between 8 and 15%. And the unprofitable funnels had refunds above 20%, which means 1 out of 5 customers were asking for their money back, which is not a good thing. Now, here's what drove a high refund rates, which is low lead quality, especially from payment plans. The funnels that offered Split It or Klarna payments plans had refund rates that were 2 or 3 times higher than funnels that only accepted pay in fulls or traditional payment plans, because payment plan buyers are less qualified, less committed, and more likely to default or dispute. So if your refund rate is above 10%, you have a lead quality problem, not a delivery problem. Fifth benchmark, operational overhead as a percentage of revenue. This includes software, CSM, admin, creative production, and all of the fixed costs it takes to run a business. Across all the funnels, the average operational overhead was 18% of revenue. The highly profitable funnels kept overhead below 12% by running lean teams and cutting unnecessary software, and barely profitable funnels had overhead between 15 and 22%. And the unprofitable funnels had overhead above 25%, which means a quarter of their revenue was going to just keeping the lights on. The pattern here was clear. The funnels with the lowest overhead were the ones with the lowest software subscriptions and the smallest teams. They automated as much as possible and only hired when it was absolutely necessary. Sixth benchmark, and this is the ultimate metric, net profit margin. Across all the funnels, the average net profit margin was 14%. The highly profitable funnels had margins above 25%, which means for every dollar spent, the highly profitable funnels had margins above 25%, which means for every dollar of revenue, they kept 25 cents as profits. The barely profitable funnels had margins between 5% and 15%, and the unprofitable funnels had negative margins, losing money on every single sale. So now, here's what determined net profit margin more than anything else: pricing and lead quality. The funnels with the highest margins were the ones charging premium prices and attracting high-quality pay-in-full buyers. The funnels with the lowest margins were the ones underpricing and accepting anyone who could afford a payment plan. So if you want to improve your net profit margin, you have two levers: raise your prices and improve your lead quality. All right, so now let's talk about which funnel types perform the best and which ones perform the worst. The best performing funnel type was a hybrid structure, a webinar combined with a VSL call funnel. This hybrid approach had the highest net profit margins, averaging 24% across all funnels I analyzed. So here's why it worked so well. The webinar educates and builds trust. The VSL pre-sells the offer and the call closes the deal. So you're hitting prospects with multiple touch points, each one reinforcing the value and moving them closer to the sale. But by the time someone gets on a sales call, they already watched the webinar, they already watched the VSL, and they're already pre-sold. That means higher show-up rates, higher close rates, and lower refund rates because they know exactly what they're buying. The key to making this work is having each piece of the funnel feed into the next. So the webinar directs to the VSL directs to the call booking, and you're using retargeting and follow-up sequences to make sure people who engage with one piece eventually sees the other offers. The second best performing funnel type was a VSL call funnel with a non-opt-in embed questionnaire. That means people who watch the VSL, when they're ready to book, they'll fill out a type form or a GHL embed questionnaire right below the page. No email opt-in required. So this funnel had on average net profit margins of 20%, which is still excellent. The advantage of this structure is that it qualifies leads before the call without adding friction from an opt-in gate. So people who fill out the questionnaire are serious because they already invested time into watching the VSL and answering the questions. And because there's no opt-in, you're not losing people who don't want to give them. And because there's no opt-in, you're not losing people who don't want to give their email before they're even ready. The key is having qualification questions that actually filter for intent and fit, not just demographic information. So by the time someone books in a call, you already know they're qualified and your sales team isn't wasting time on tire kickers. The third best performing funnel type, and this is for clients doing $100,000 per month plus, was the full hybrid stack. This combines a VSL call funnel with a profile visit ad and a hyper-personalized DM campaign using an N8N flow. So you're using a VSL ad to drive people to the call funnel, profile visit ads to build your Instagram audience, and a DM campaign to start conversations with people who engaged. And the N8N flow means each conversation is hyper-personalized based on what the content they engaged with, what ads they clicked, and what stage they're in the funnel. This funnel had an average profit margin of 22%. The reason it worked is because you're surrounding your prospects with multiple touch points, paid ads, organic, direct messages, and nurture sequences. So if someone doesn't book a call from the VSL, they might follow you from a profile visit ad, engage with your content, and then respond to a DM that leads to a call. It's more complex to set up and manage, but for clients who need to generate $100,000 in revenue per month, this is the structure that scales. All right, so now let's talk about worst performing funnel types, the low ticket offer funnel. This is where you sell a $500 product or a $100 product or even a course, and then try to ascend people to a higher ticket offer later. This funnel had an average net profit margin of -4%, which means it lost money, a lot of money. So here's why it doesn't work for immediate profitability. It's called the sales cycle. So someone buys a low ticket offer, goes through it, and then maybe 3 to 6 months later, they're ready to buy the mid ticket offer, and then another 3 to 6 months later, they might buy the high ticket offer. So you're spending money to acquire customers for a low ticket product that barely covers your ad spend, then you're waiting months or even a year to see the high ticket revenue. For most business owners, that kills cash flow and profitability because you're constantly spending on the front end without seeing the back end revenue fast enough. The only time this funnel works is when you have deep pockets, long time horizons, and a proven ascension model with strong email and SMS nurture. But as a direct response funnel to generate immediate high-ticket sales, it's a money pit. And the second worst performing funnel type was a VSL with a meta-native lead form or an email opt-in before the booking. This funnel had on average net profit margin of 6%, barely breaking even. The problem is the friction. People have to watch the VSL, opt in with their email, and then go through another step to book in a call. And most people drop off after the opt-in because they're not ready to commit yet, and they forget or lose interest. So you're spending money to generate leads, but only a small percentage of those leads actually book in a call. And the leads who do opt in are often lower quality because they're not committing to anything. They're just giving you their email. The funnels that removed the opt-in and went straight from the VSL to an embed questionnaire to call booking saw way better conversion rates and profitability because there's less friction, and people who book are more committed because they took action right away instead of opting in and then ghosting. The third worst performing funnel type was the low friction lead magnet funnel. This is where you offer a free PDF, a free training, or a free guide, and then you try to nurture those people into a high ticket sale. This funnel had on average net profit margin of -2%, losing money. This was not good. Here's why it doesn't work. The people who opt in for free stuff are not the same people who buy $10,000 programs. You're attracting tire kickers, opportunity seekers, and people who just want the free thing without any intention of buying. So you spend money driving traffic to lead magnets, you spend time nurturing those leads, and almost none of them convert. The only time this funnel works is when you have a massive audience and you're using it to build your email list for long-term brand building. But as a direct response funnel to generate high ticket sales, it's complete shit. All right, so now let's talk about the variables that had the biggest impact on profitability, starting with the most important one, which is lead quality. This was the single biggest differentiator between profitable and unprofitable funnels. The funnels with the highest profit margins had their cost per qualified lead that was only 10 to 20% higher than their cost per lead, their CPL. The funnels with the lowest profit margins had a cost per qualified lead that was 2 or 3 times higher than their cost per lead. So what does this mean? If your CPL is $50, but your CPQL is $150, you're wasting 2/3 of your ad spend on people who will never buy. And that destroys your profitability because you're paying to generate volume, but only a fraction of that volume is actually useful. So the most profitable funnels were the ones that optimize for lead quality from the start. Better creative, better ICP calls, better targeting, better qualification questions. They weren't trying to get cheap leads, they were trying to get the right leads. And that's what made them profitable. Second variable, which is pricing. This might seem obvious, but pricing had a massive impact on profitability. The funnels charging $15,000 had an average net profit margin of 24%. The funnels charging $8,000 to $12,000 had an average net profit margin of 18%, and the funnels charging below $8,000 had an average profit margin of 8%. The reason is simple. Your costs don't scale linearly with your price, but your revenue does. If you charge $5,000, you still have to pay sales commissions, you still have to deliver the services, and you still have operational overhead. But if you can charge $15,000, your costs might only go up by 20 to 30% while your revenue triples. So the most profitable funnels were the ones that charged premium prices and positioned themselves as high value done for you solutions. Anyways, that's it for today. Hopefully that helps. Anyways, I'll see you in the next one. Much love and talk soon.